then again, their parents probably didn't help them, so it's just kind of continues down through the generations. But by not practicing healthy habits, oftentimes you just don't think right. So it's hard to make those decisions because of real and true physiological reasons that your brain can't make those proper decisions because let's say you got too much glucose circulating in your blood, which is a very important aspect of brain function. So what I want to do here in this next segment is take you through a very, very important part of our bodily function, the human nervous system, in a very, very brief overview. And as the shows go on, we're going to break down each section of that nervous system, and we're going to give you little snippets throughout each show on how you can enhance those areas of our body or the nervous system more naturally. And right along with that, we're going to talk about metabolism or our biochemistry and how both of those systems really are, if you're going to look at any two main systems that affect everything else, it's those two systems. So taking care of those two systems is vitally important, and there's a lot to it. But over the next couple of years, we're going to cover all that, and we're going to give you the different things that you can start researching yourself to see if that is something that would be right for you. So we'll be back in a minute, and we'll start with going over certain aspects of the human nervous system. Welcome back. I'm Dr. Craig Steingraber here at the Summit Healthplex, and this is Naturally Healthy. Now, I made some general statements about taking control of your health care last segment, and in my opinion, some things that you need to do that. And right now, I want to go over some basic maps of our nervous system. Now, I mentioned just before the break, there's really two main systems, in my opinion, that we want to make sure that we stimulate appropriately, feed appropriately, maintain appropriately, and do those different things more repetitively throughout our life. And we're going to ensure a much healthier and much longer life in most cases. Now, there's always that needle in the haystack that's out there. The guy that started smoking cigarettes when he was 15 years old, lived to be 100, died of natural causes, and never got lung cancer. You just let nature take its course. He's really, 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 really lucky. That don't happen generally. And so letting nature take its course without trying to do some good things for this body, this machine, this soul, is just, once again, one of my favorite words in some respects. It's knucklehead move. All right, so I want to give you some anatomy here, a few little teasers relative to what you can do to improve its function, and we'll see how far that gets us here the rest of the show. Now, I'm going to read here a little bit. The first quote is out of Textbook of Medical Physiology, Guyton and Hall. This is probably the most used physiology textbook in medical and chiropractic colleges. I don't remember which year this is, but it's a few years old. I think I got it in, I don't know. I like to get the updates of most of these textbooks whenever they come out. It might have been 2002 or so. But right out of Guyton's Textbook of Medical Physiology, the most important role of the nervous system is to control the various bodily activities. One of the most important functions of the nervous system as well is to process incoming information in such a way that appropriate responses occur. So what does that say? The nervous system controls everything. It allows us to feel everything, and it allows us to do everything. And when different sections of that system, that nervous system, are not functioning as well as they should, we're not going to function as well as we should. And it can lead to a myriad of different symptoms, not to mention pain, quite frankly, at certain times that we don't need to feel it. Right? Now, another book, this is one of my favorite books here actually, Principles of Neuroscience, Eric Kandel, Schwartz and Jessel, but Kandel's Principles of Neuroscience. Quote out of there. Let me make sure it's right here so everybody can see it if they want to go buy that book. It weighs about 20 pounds. Principles of Neuroscience. Quite simply, the goal of neuroscience is to understand the mind, how we perceive, how we move, how we think, and how we remember. So, once again, the nervous system controls everything. So what I want to do here is take you through some different aspects of nervous system function. Okay. Can I now move right over to here? Now, the human nervous system is extremely technical. And still, in a great sense of the word, we've just touched the tip of the iceberg with it. But I'm going to take you through some of the anatomy of that and generally how it works. And as the shows go on, we're going to break each of those sections down, as I mentioned. So generally speaking, we have a peripheral nervous system, meaning outside of something, and a central nervous system. You know, and there's billions and millions and billions and trillions of nerve connections in brain and out in the periphery. So it's an unreal amount. So, but I'm going to give you this basic aspect of how it generally is put together. The peripheral system, this is a basic poster here that doesn't really show the spinal cord and the brain, but you have these yellow things out here on the arms and into our chest cavity and down here on our abdomen and down into our legs and feet. And that is our peripheral nervous system, essentially. Now, there is another aspect of the peripheral nervous system that can be called the autonomic nervous system, which we'll get to, and even the enteric nervous system, which is our gut nervous system to a great degree, which we'll get to that too. But for the sake of this initial conversation, the peripheral system is outside of the spinal cord and the brain. Now, think of each one of these aspects of these peripheral nerves to a certain degree to have information that only comes in up into the spinal cord. So something stimulates a nerve in the periphery, which takes that type of nerve signal into the spinal cord. And these nerve signals, they are electrical. Just like a battery or the electricity going to a light bulb. It's very, very similar. And so once a nerve gets stimulated, it turns into electricity and it goes up into that electrical current, travels up into the spinal cord. And then within the spinal cord, depending on what nerves were stimulated, it goes into an area of the spinal cord that takes that information up into the brain. Now, in some instances, it comes right into the spinal cord and right back out. But for the sake of this conversation, the nerve signal travels up or from the arm or hand into a certain area or from an organ into a certain area and up to the brain. There are many different brain regions that electrical current or signal travels up to. Now, once it reaches certain parts of the brain will process all this information. And when it processes that information and computes it, it sends that information back down the spinal cord through other sections of the spinal cord, and then back out one of these into the peripheral or autonomic nervous system. Now, out into aspects of the body, out into organs, out into muscles, into anything to direct that function. So there's a stimulus from the outside. That stimulus gets turned into electricity, electrochemical processes, but we'll say electricity, travels up into a certain section of the spinal cord, goes up into different sections of the brain. The brain processes that information and then sends information back down and out to the body. Now, in certain instances, the information just stays in the brain and impacts how we think or our memory and different aspects of brain function there. So kind of in a sense of the word, stimulation from out in the periphery, quite frankly, can stimulate things or sections of the brain and just kind of stay in that section of the brain. So that is how this system essentially works. Stimulation from the outside gets carried to the spinal cord to the brain, brain processes it, sends it back down the spinal cord in different sections and out to the body. Now, that's extremely rudimentary, but that's how this nervous system works. So, we're going to break down these different sections so that you get an even better understanding of what can affect this nervous system in a good way and a bad way. And the nervous system controls everything. It allows us to feel everything and it allows everything to be controlled. So you got to make this system work the best that it can. And it's going to impact our health in many, 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 many positive ways. Now, exercise. We all know we're supposed to exercise. Exercise is like saying food. Well, what kind of food are you eating? There's zillions of kinds of food. There's zillions of kinds of exercises. But generally, and we'll get to that in another show too and talk about different aspects of exercise, but exercise is really a primary way of stimulating this nervous system. If you do it wrong, or you have some weaknesses in these different levels of the nervous system that we'll go over on numerous shows upcoming, if you have weaknesses in those in certain parts of the nervous system, whether it's in the periphery, in the spinal cord, or in the many sections of the brain, that exercise is not going to help you near as much. And in some instances, it may make certain neurological problems worse if you're doing certain types of exercise in a certain way. Okay? People walking around the street, had a heart attack, go start walking. Really, one of the main reasons why they're walking is to be more active, to stimulate these nerves, which stimulate our brain better, to stimulate heart and vascular function better. We'll get to that later on too. Folks, thank you very much for joining me this week. We're going to get much more specific with some different aspects of this human nervous system as well as our metabolic function and chemistry. And I look forward to doing that for you. Meet me here back next week on Naturally Healthy.